ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and we have today special guests. It's Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here.
And finally, we have Ivan Kucherenko from Kyiv, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hi, Jonathan. Hello to everyone. Nice to be here again with you.
Great to see you. And we know that you have videos for us. Let's start with one of them now.
Yeah, we actually can start with both in any consequence. They're very short and
wild.
They complete each other. So let's watch both videos from the beginning.
Okay.
Let's watch another one. Mark, please.
Bin Laden, Ceausescu, Milosevic, Gaddafi, Kambanda, and Putin. All of them committed crimes against humanity. When some were eliminated,
killed Osama bin Laden,
or died in a lonely cell in Hague,
at the death of Slobodan Milosevic,
one of them still goes public and does interviews on his crimes instead.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin.
When the butcher of the Balkans, Slobodan Milosevic, manslaughtered thousands of Bosnian Muslims in the town of Srebrenica, he was subject to a tribunal. John Kambanda, who led the genocide against the Tutsis with a bunch of other officials, was sentenced to life imprisonment. Convicted for genocidal policy against his own people, Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu was executed by firing squad after a summary trial on Christmas Day. Muammar Gaddafi,
who showed no mercy in his own life, begs for mercy.
One of the world's richest figures ever, and meanwhile, a notorious Libya leader, was captured and killed following mass murder and rapes orders under his rule. And Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden was liquidated for the acts of terror against peaceful civilians in the tragedy Americans won't ever forget. Putin and his slew commit just the same in Ukraine, every single day. The only difference, he is still safe, sound, and far from The Hague. Neither the ICC arrest warrant
for Vladimir Putin
nor a threat of potential detention in 123 countries stood in his way. He keeps laughing and goes public to justify terror and death.
I think what keeps Putin motivated is that his favorite documentary movie, he watches it almost every night, is The Last Days of Gaddafi. He watches this, and this is what keeps him very motivated to keep power, to win elections with close to 100% of the votes. And unfortunately, there's no end to it, at least the way we see it today. Maybe tomorrow will be a different picture, I hope. And in the meantime, Ukrainian people, they are suffering almost as much, if not more, as during the Second World War, because the Germans, when Soviet army stopped resisting in Ukraine, they did not kill Ukrainian people. Okay, they were killing Jews, but they were killing Jews in all other countries just as well. The Ukrainian people, they could continue to work, to live their normal life most of the time. And only with this regime of Putin that's becoming like a tragedy, in my opinion, unequal to the world since Second World War. Jonathan, what do you think?
I agree with you. It's this is clearly the most devastating war in Europe since World War II, and it has managed to wake up almost all of the Western NATO allies who are virtually unanimous in their desire to stop Russia in Ukraine and to prevent Russia from taking over Ukraine or subjugating it in any way. It is clear to all of the members of NATO that Russia should not be rewarded in any way, shape, manner, or form for its aggression against Ukraine. And as I've stated before, the two sides have politically irreconcilable objectives. Russia desires that Ukraine should cease to exist, completely submit, cease to exist. Ukraine, for its part, wants Russia to simply go away and leave them alone, let them be independent. And so there is no negotiating between those two positions. One must be compelled to give up. One must be compelled to give up its objective in order for this war to stop.
In the last couple of days, a new financial injection from European Union happened in tune of $850 million. So it's already done. And sooner or later, United States will get out of its lethargical
situation. It will, because as you can see by carefully watching the American political scene and watching all the political maneuverings, contrary to the opinions of many observers, the United States political system is functioning precisely in the way the founding fathers intended it to perform. That is, the United States political system, a constitutional republic, not a democracy, but a constitutional republic with a system of checks and balances that exists nowhere else in the world, was designed specifically so that the United States government could not move too swiftly in any one direction. It requires concerted effort on the part of the government or part of a political party to get the United States to move in any particular direction for a prolonged period of time. It can be likened to trying to make an aircraft carrier battle group in the middle of the ocean suddenly execute a left turn. It takes over 100 miles of ocean for a U.S. carrier battle group to execute a left turn. You need a lot of ocean. You need a lot of time for maneuverability. And in the same way, in order for the United States government to go in a particular direction, it requires prolonged, concerted effort. The only real exception to this rule, this general tendency, was during the Cold War itself, when the United States government adopted the grand strategy of containment, which was originally espoused by George Kennan in the 1947 article in Foreign Affairs, The Sources of Soviet Conduct, in which basically the United States, by laying down a grand strategy of containment of the Soviet Union, essentially by preventing the Soviet Union from achieving through subversion or conquest what it could otherwise attain through ideological subversion, by simply preventing the Soviet Union from expanding, that eventually the Soviet Union would buckle under the stresses of its own internal contradictions, economic and political. And history demonstrated that George Kennan was right. And the strength of the containment strategy was that both the Democratic and Republican parties in the United States could unify around that grand strategy. They both agreed to follow that grand strategy of containment. And so then during the Cold War, it did not matter which political party was in power. Both subscribed to the grand strategy of containment, and the only difference would be maybe a change in strategy or a change in operational or national security strategy, but the adherence to the overall objective of containment was adhered to consistently. Now we do not have a grand strategy per se. There are some who are arguing for a new strategy of neo-containment for directed at both Russia and China. But until such a coherent grand strategy, new grand strategy for the post-Cold War era comes about, right now we are engaging in kind of an ad hoc approach to grand strategy. But be that as it may, the United States, in its own disorganized, seemingly chaotic fashion, is gradually coalescing around aid to Ukraine and is supporting it in one way or another. So you will see eventually more and more support emerging for Ukraine in the coming months, particularly before this year's election. And so I project that that Putin's calculation that if the United States elects former President Trump to reelect him to that it is not going to win the war for Russia. It's a false hope on Russia's part. The other NATO allies are coalescing behind Ukraine and providing them aid, albeit in a somewhat disorganized and ad hoc fashion, but they are still providing aid to Ukraine. And we are starting to see the effects of this. By April, by the end of April, I believe the ammunition and resupply issues that Ukraine has been having will have stopped. And there are already indications that the Russian offensive is being halted in the east. So then it will become a matter of transitioning to air superiority for Ukraine as the effects of these new technological infusions of various types of weapon systems, particularly the F-16s, begin to have their effect. And at that point, I'm looking for a decisive operational counterstroke on the part of the Ukrainian military.
Actually, I would like to add that during the Cold War, there were Soviet, I would say, expeditions to Hungary in 1956 and to Czechoslovakia in 1968. And the West, although was not too happy about these developments, but it was like a Russian sphere of influence. Right. They could do whatever they want to do or so on. Ukraine today is completely different. It's an independent country. Yes, it's located next to Russia, but it's a geographic question. It's been then for last.
When the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, all the republics of the former Soviet Union split apart. They attained independence, and so reestablishing it. Putin's attempt to establish a new Russian empire is a form of a revanchism, a form of trying to rewrite history, trying to establish on purely nationalistic grounds. There is no worldwide ideology of Marxism-Leninism or a Marxist revolution driving the effort by Russia. And now it is pure nationalism. It is pure imperialism, really, if you will, on the part of Russia, and they have made no secret of it. They are claiming the right to dominate or the right to take over other countries, and they are relying very heavily on their nuclear arsenal. Their nuclear, as Boris Yeltsin once said in that speech to the Russian Duma back in 1994, he could quote, "The only reason Russia is considered a great power is because its armed forces have nuclear weapons." That tells you pretty much what they are relying on, but it also provides a clue to stopping them. What I've been advocating is that the United States and its NATO allies should create that for the long term, create that global ballistic missile defense system, which will neutralize Russia's nuclear arsenal, as well as the nuclear arsenals by extension of China, North Korea, Iran, or any other rogue nuclear state that seeks to use nuclear weapons as a symbol of great power status or as a means of leverage against the West.
Yes, Jonathan, and what Yeltsin said in 1994 exactly that yet were still applicable to Ukraine and Belarus and Kazakhstan. And only because of this stupid Budapest memorandum, which Ukraine should have never agreed to, then it elevated Russia as the only nuclear power. However, I don't think that the nuclear threats will materialize, although Putin now participates himself in saying that Russia is ready now for a nuclear war with the West and all other stuff. I don't believe that this is just a bravado, and I think that I don't think that Putin will be victorious in November this year due to Trump's becoming president, because in my opinion, again, it's just my opinion, is that American people, they like adventures, but to a certain degree. And when you see an individual who is twice impeached in one term, which will never happen the next 1,000 years.
The Civil War general Robert E. Lee for the Confederacy said it best when he said that it is well that war is so terrible, otherwise we should grow too fond of it.
Yeah, great saying. Ivan, tell me, please, you are in sight of Ukraine and its capital, Kyiv. You are, of course, in contact with many people who also live there. What people really think about this conflict and its possible resolution?
Depends on when you ask them, because last 2 days Ukraine is under the massive missile attack. Yesterday Russia attacked Kyiv with more than 30 missiles, and today I've showed you the video. More than 90 missiles hit different Ukrainian cities and the energy infrastructure and the dam of Dnipro hydroelectric station. So obviously that Russia tried to destroy it, to repeat their terroristic act when they've destroyed the Kakhovka dam last year. And the only reason while they're continuing to do such really scary acts, such acts of terrorism, because they see that they are unpunished. Western countries didn't react last year, actually, when they've destroyed Kakhovka dam. There were no reactions when Russia continued to attack Ukrainian cities, to kill civilians, to bomb civilian infrastructure. Now Russia sees that United States are in election process, and that the delay to Ukraine, that the aid to Ukraine is being delayed, that Republicans and Democrats can't come with an agreement on which conditions give such aid to Ukraine. And because of that, Russia will continue their attacks. The longer Western countries will be in this slow mode, the more aggressively Russia will behave. We've seen already that their rockets come into the air space of NATO countries, that they fall in Poland, in Romania, and that their aircrafts enter their fighter jets enter the airspace of NATO countries. And the only reason why Russia is not attacking the Baltic states or Poland, as also the countries of former Soviet Union, which they consider a part of their empire, is the war in Ukraine, because they just can't the possibility to open the second battlefield, the second front, and go against NATO. So they provoke, they see that there is no reaction behind it from the United States, and they continue to do it. I don't know what possible reaction would be in case when if Russia was succeeded in destroying the Dnipro, the dam of Dnipro hydroelectric station, and committing another flood of Ukraine and another technogenic catastrophe in Ukraine, like they did last year in when they destroyed Kakhovka Dam. What would be a reaction from the United States, from the Western countries, in your opinion, from the United Nations? What would be the reaction?
Well, Russia will be even further ostracized from the democratic community, or in fact, almost all communities, even if they're not democratic. I think what Putin, being in the opinion of many great tacticians, so he figures out that, okay, Europe probably will continue helping. US is not helping and probably will not help for any foreseeable future. So they feel that they have a green light to just go to Ukraine with all means available and very quickly, probably, to win the war. But I can't figure out that even if they have now temporary advantage, a military advantage, even that's not so obvious, because after taking over Avdiivka, I haven't heard of any other developments of that success, if you can call it success, taking Avdiivka after several months. Okay, so now basically what they're doing, it's a pure terror. It's not a war anymore. It's a pure terror.
It can be compared pretty much to what Nazi Germany did in the Battle of Britain. Once it had become clear that Nazi Germany's Luftwaffe was not going to be able to dominate the skies over Great Britain, they had defeated the air offensive, which was necessary for Nazi Germany in order. They had to be able to gain air superiority, supremacy really, over the beaches in Great Britain in order for their Operation Sea Lion to have any chance at all of success. It would have been a very tricky and problematic operation anyway, given the presence of the Royal Navy. And yes, but in any case, they needed to be able to do that. But once Great Britain struck at Berlin, they bombed Berlin. It was kind of a token raid on Berlin, but it provoked Hitler enough to tell Goering to begin bombing London in retaliation. That's when the Blitz began against London. And that was not for its military significance, it was a pure terror operation designed to try to terrorize Britain into surrender by unleashing nighttime attacks against London. They were not really going for air superiority anymore. It was simply terror against the British people. And as you note, it failed. It failed to break the morale of the British people. And in the same way, now these missile attacks and other types of attacks against Ukrainian civilian centers and other infrastructure targets is a tacit admission that their military operation has failed. And they are simply trying to break the morale of the Ukrainian people through the use of indiscriminate missile attacks and other types of attacks that they can. So this is why it is so important that Ukraine is able to successfully integrate the weapons and systems that it gets to be able to eventually create air superiority over its own territory. That is the necessary prelude to being able to launch a decisive counterstroke, whether it be in Crimea, to sever the link and sever control of Crimea from Russia, which would be a major operational defeat, and complement that with successful counter operations in the east to be able to drive the Russians out of occupied Ukrainian territory. But right now it is frustrating. I have to admit, to watch this rather chaotic process as the Ukrainians desperately try to integrate what aid they are getting from various sources and do not underestimate the difficulty involved in being able to coordinate these various sources of aid into a coherent defense and eventually create the best basis for a counteroffensive to drive the Russians out.
What's quite scary is that for a while there was an appearance that Ukrainian anti-ballistic forces can actually defend most of Ukrainian cities, and now Russians intensified their attacks, especially using a massive amount of drones. And it seems to me that still Ukrainians have to find answer how to defend against that. What, Ivan, have you heard about that?
And we already are doing. We are really efficient. Our defenders are really efficient in shutting down these drones using the mobile groups of soldiers on SUV pickup vehicles with the mounted machine guns and very powerful projectors, so they're ready to detect these drones in the sky. But the problem is that Russia is still able to get these drones in really great quantities from Iran, because they are not able to produce them on their own still. They're getting them from Iran, they're getting support from North Korea, they're forming the coalition with these countries, and you don't know what Russia is giving these countries in exchange for getting these ammunition. You don't know what technology they're providing to these countries. You don't know what they're giving them, and they're increasing the power of these countries. And as long as this process continues, the so-called acts of evil is becoming stronger and stronger, and this is a really great threat in future to the United States as well, because one day North Korea will be able to develop a rocket using the Russian technologies. We will be able to fly not just to the banks of Japan, but to the eastern banks of the United States. And that day, North Korea will threaten not the American allies with nuclear weapons, but it will threaten the United States, or probably Kim Chen, someone, another their dictator, would be mad enough to attack United States like Japanese did during the Second World War when they attacked Pearl Harbor. And all like we've seen in this video, like Osama bin Laden did on September 11. They attacked the United States, the New York, and this made United States to join this war, to start this war. But I think, and I'm sure that probably it would be smarter to prevent these tragedies. It would be smarter to act before these tragedies will happen and save a lot of lives of the American citizens, first of all, as well. And but it's not happening. The United States are in political process. Republican senators and Republican chairmen, they're blocking the aid to Ukraine, which is really required here to continue our struggle against Russia and probably to defeat Russia in this war. And when one of the parts of this acts of evil will be defeated, maybe it will be harder for them to evolve and in future to become a great threat to the United States. But I'm not sure that American politicians have enough strategic thinking when they are struggling each other in Congress or in Senate, and when they are blocking this aid, when they are not given the ETACMS, where they're not given any other technologies. To stop this war, one country should be brave enough to give everything to Ukraine in order to Ukraine defeat Russia, and then probably it will make this acts of evil less powerful in future. Now it's becoming more and more powerful with each day, because they're transferring technologies, they're transferring resources, they're transferring weapons, they exchange, and I'm not sure that United States need a strong North Korea with long-range ballistic missiles, with the nuclear submarines, with the modern fighter jets and other technologies which Russia may give them, or Iran, in exchange for the old Soviet tanks, or for old ammunition, for the old shells, which they require in this war, and which they just can't produce in required amounts in order to continue this war.
Ivan, I believe that all the bickering in the United States, they will not last much longer. I think it's getting closer and closer to being resolved, and resolved means providing help to Ukraine. To how quickly and what size of help remains to be seen. But I think that once the gate will be open, the help will start flowing to Ukraine. Now, don't forget that for Ukraine, it's existential war. Even to Russia, it's almost existential war, because Russia is not under the danger to be overrun by Ukraine, but it's in danger not to win the war. And when Russians, in their psychology, if you don't win the war, you lose the war. They have this binary system that you either win or you lose. There's nothing exists in between. So now for the West, and specifically the United States, it is not existential war. It's very important war, but it's not existential.
Not yet.
Not
yet existential,
right.
but it may become, because in my opinion, United States politicians are doing everything to make this war existential to the United States in future.
By lack of response, they encouraged Putin. Go, Putin! I don't know. Maybe that's
the situation is reminding me more and more of that which existed in 1939 and 1940. When the Western Allies, Britain and France, had the opportunity after Germany committed its initial aggressions, they had that window of opportunity for them to undertake offensive action against Nazi Germany before it was before it would have been completely ready to undertake its offensive against France and the Low Countries. But they waited. Unfortunately, they conducted a phony war. They waited too long, and they allowed Nazi Germany to get fully prepared and unleash its power against the West. So now we face an analogous situation here, in which we can still stop, if we stop Russia in Ukraine and drive them back, and then take appropriate measures to neutralize their nuclear arsenals and contain them, a new strategy of containment. Once that can be, if we can pay that price now, then we will avoid having to pay a much heavier price later on.
Jonathan, I've said many times that, of course, the result of the war depends heavily on the economy, industrial might. That's what's happened in the Second World War. And nothing has changed. The industrial might, the military, the industrial complex of the West is superior many times to that what Russia and North Korea and Iran or even China combined. The problem is that Russia and its allies demonstrate enormous resolve and passion. Passion is another key word to achieve their goals, whether they're right goals or wrong goals. And the West, of course, Ukrainians have passion more than anybody else, and all of them combined. But it's not enough because there is not enough the industrial might, the economy of scale, and the Western help is now sort of fluttering. But situation will change, I think, very quickly. And I think from that point on, there will be no return. It will be like a heavy machine will start going forward, and Russians will not be able to withstand it.
I agree. I think it is increasingly time for Western leaders to learn to think more strategically, to learn to develop what I would call a strategy of asymmetric response, to use their intelligence and military resources to respond to the aggressive Russian strategy in ways for which the Russians are not prepared or willing to deal with.
Yes. Okay, and before we will end today's program, Ivan, the last word for you, please.
World, we need your support, and especially United States, because without that, the war will come to you sooner or later. You will not hide from it behind the elections or any political processes. So the only way to stop this war in future is to help Ukraine defeat Russia now, as soon as possible.
Excellent. Ivan, agree with you. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for today's program, and have a great weekend. And we'll see you on Tuesday, same place, same time. Bye-bye, everybody. Slava Ukraini.
Героям.